Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm Regina Graves SDSA, and today I have the honor of speaking with set decorator Carol Silverman SDSA and production designer Amy Williams about the collaboration on the Peacock drama Long Bright River. Long Bright River is an 8-part series based on the crime novel of the same name by Liz Moore. The story follows Mickey, played by Amanda Seyfried, a Philadelphia police officer whose estranged addicted sister Casey goes missing at the same time a series of murders begin in their Philadelphia neighborhood. Mickey is obsessed with finding her sister and the killer intertwining her professional and personal life. Carol, Amy, thank you for joining today.
Thank you.
Let's get to it. So I'm always very interested in how people made their start and their journey in working in our production, in the production field. So can you each tell me how you got your start?
Well, I started in theater. Actually, I started as an actor and found out that was not for me pretty quickly. And just kind of got into props from there, and then worked on Broadway, off Broadway, met people in film, started shifting over to there. You know what I like about film over theater is the way you work with objects. It's really different, like what the objects have to be, how they work. The sheer amount of objects. We have a lot more in film and TV, as you know. So, and we can create more elaborate environments. So I would say I really like that better. I never thought I'd leave the theater, but then I found something I like better.
And you were hooked.
I was hooked.
Amy, what about you?
I've always been an artist and into artwork. I graduated with an art history degree, so I moved to New York in the early 2000s, and I worked in the art scene, art galleries, some museums, and it just wasn't working. It was just kind of, I wasn't creating anything. I was sitting in this white space all day long, and I just really missed creating things. So I answered a Craigslist ad, and it turned out to be a film with a production designer named Tommaso Ortino, and the two of us manned the entire film. It was like a 3-person art department, and I finally realized, like, oh my gosh, here are my people. All my random interests kind of play into this job. I get to use my architecture background and design and color theory. And so from there, I just hustled for a year and just took everything I could take for free. And then people thought I knew what I was doing, so they hired me, and I kept going.
I love that. I love the way just people end up in our business. And once we get into it, we're just kind of sucked in, find what we love. So, Amy, how did you come to work on this project, and what attracted you to it?
It was kind of a rarity. My agent had pitched me for it, and Jerry Kuffler was the line producer. And I had known his name, and he gave me a call. We had a really great conversation. I read the book. And then I read the script, and I was immediately absorbed. I wasn't familiar with the Philadelphia neighborhood where this took place in Kensington, and I just was really fascinated by it. And after the meeting with the showrunners, I just loved that it was a very female-focused and run show. Jerry was the token male. And, most of the DPs were female. It was, the showrunners were female. The book was great. And I really loved the director of our pilot episode, Hagar Ben Asher. Her perspective was just really creative and very cluttered and dirty. And so I thought it would be kind of a fun opportunity. And I had also never production designed a police station before, and my father was a police officer. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of bring my childhood memories of what police stations are and kind of try to make something a little bit different.
And I know that the author, was involved, but was she involved in any, like, guiding with any of the visuals for the series at all? Or did you present her with some looks? Or was she not involved at all with kind of like the overall design?
Liz Moore was very involved. She's one of the showrunners. She's very immersed in the Kensington community. So she was really very hands-on. And we went to Kensington several times. She was involved, or she still is involved with a lot of the charities in the area. We went to soup kitchens. We got into police stations. Because of the research she put into this book and some of her personal experiences, she was very involved. And I think I may have gotten the job because I referenced a street photographer named Jeffrey Stockbridge, which is one of her friends. And he's this amazing street photographer for over the last decade, has just really captured the heart and the soul and the struggle of the community.
Nice. And Carol, what about you? Did you read the book? Like, what attracted you to the story and the series?
Well, I started to read the book, but it was when we were already in production and they changed it a lot. I thought, well, I'll get a lot of backstory on all these characters. I'll know better how to dress their homes and things, but it was a little different. So then I started to get confused of, like, some of the major characters, right? The grandfather, the grandmother in the book, and different personalities are a little bit different. The backstories are a little bit different. So I have it and I would like to read it, although, I don't know. I know the story now. I know what happens. So, and also, the showrunners said that as time went on, they got further and further away from the story, and they themselves were a little confused about what was in the show and what was in the book. So the answer is no, I did not read it.
I just feel like I watched, all eight episodes, and I feel like the show was very architecture and design heavy, especially finding out that you did not shoot in Philadelphia. Episode 1 begins in a tent. You really don't know where you are. You see the mountains and you see this wooded area, so you think that they're camping, obviously. And then when she leaves the tent, you see that she's in this homeless, encampment in Philly. So the depiction for me of Philly was so honest in the feel of it all. I worked there a couple years ago, and I felt like I was in Kensington. And to be quite honest, I had a conversation with Carol a couple of days ago, and she told me, no, we did not film that, which kind of blew me away. So I wanted to know, what were your biggest challenges in finding the locations in New York to depict Philadelphia?
It was a shame that we couldn't film there because it is so distinct and so rich. But luckily for Carol and I, we're both New Yorkers, so getting to film in our backyard was really great. So it all started with the elevated subway. We needed to find that location. We needed to find kind of a blank slate somewhere in the New York area that we could take over and trash. Carol and her team brought a ton of trash and garbage to the streets of Bay Ridge and Utrecht Avenue. And the only thing we weren't allowed to do was change the street signage, which was a real disappointment because that, really sells the environment. But, Carol and her team did such an amazing job that the police were called several times because they thought actual encampments were coming into their neighborhood. And we also really honored sort of the artist and the artistic side of that neighborhood. It's really a struggling neighborhood, but there's a lot of art and murals and graffiti. So we tried to incorporate that to bring in the life and the color and the flavor.
Yeah, I had that as a question later on, but let's talk about the murals and like the graffiti. Did you have to, I mean, I know how things are so complicated these days with clearances and not knowing who did graffiti and all of that. So did your art department do all of the graffiti and artwork?
No, actually, we had an amazing clearance coordinator, Paige Peterson, who we worked with, and the producers were really hands-on. We worked with the Philadelphia Art and Murals program, and they were able to shoot a lot of the murals in Philadelphia. And we worked with the local graffiti artists from Kensington, from the neighborhood. They would come up, and most of what you see is authentic, real Kensington graffiti artists, apart from the backwoods, which we can take credit for. But for the most part, it just, because of my background in the art world, to keep it authentic, it was just really important to use real artists from the neighborhood. And I think it makes a big difference, and it made a big difference during filming because we constantly had experts around us to kind of check and double check our work.
Well, it looked really great, and such, I mean, so much work goes into that people really don't understand, especially the amount of set dressing that you had to bring in, Carol. Did you just have trucks on standby to just keep adding more and more trash? Are those things you accumulated along the way? How did you go about all of that?
We had all of our trash sorted at the shop, of tents, mattresses, furniture, like all of the different elements. Well, we had mostly the same dressers doing those sets, those locations. Jeff Francola and Jasmine and Jahira Frias. They really made this their own. They had actually backstories for a lot of people, and they were really furnishing people's tents and thinking about who the people were. And Amy said about calling the police, it's because they did such a great job, fleshing out these people who have, obviously having some issues in their lives. And these set dressers just did an amazing job. And yes, we had trucks and trucks of stuff.
Expensive, clean trash. They had to manage a lot of it. And yeah, I've never seen a team of dressers care so much and get so involved. We were really lucky.
Well, it really shows on screen. It's like a common thread throughout your show. You have like every set has so many layers of life and just, stuff that tells the whole story.
Yeah, Amy and I worked together on those layers a lot. That was something we talked about a lot. Layers.
So Amy, we're talking about the different encampments and the murals, the graffiti, everything that was brought back and used in Philadelphia. What about the abandos and the fire? Were those sets that were built? Did you film those on location, the back alleyways? Because those are also so heavily dressed. And then as the storyline goes on, you see less and less. I guess they're trying to clean up the city. But what did that all entail?
It starts with a lot of scouting. A lot of these locations that we wanted to stay true to Kensington, like the abandos and the streets. We found locations that luckily our location manager, Matt Lamb, was able to clear and allow us to, bring things like mold on the ceiling and graffiti on the walls. And we had our graffiti artist, Timothy Curtis, who is a local who grew up in Kensington, would bring in graffiti artists each week to the new sets and add that magic layer that really gives it some beauty and color and depth, as well as some authenticity with what's really happening in Philly with these abandoned homes and people squatting in them, the drug use that occurs in them.
the whole fire, was that a challenge? Did you work with special effects with that for that?
Yeah, we worked with special effects. It's a combination of special effects and visual effects. There was practical fire there and smoke, and it starts with safety and kind of non-combustible construction materials and set deck items that you bring to the story to make sure that everyone stays safe and it feels believable.
And was this all in the same area of where the grocery store is on the corner?
To think about where this is Gravesend, which is where we had G-Pop's exterior, we had Kensington Avenue and all the shops and the stores that go along with it. Alonzo's, which is a big character and a reoccurring set that Carol and her team would have to restore and dress every episode. I think that was more in Bay Ridge where the Abando was.
I think it wasn't right there, but it wasn't that far.
And then you also dressed all of the storefronts and the used appliance store.
We did not dress all of the storefronts. We did the appliance store for the scene, where that it's hero for. But we kind of, we didn't do a ton in those, I would say.
Yeah, we had the tire shop, the 99-cent store, laundromat, the appliance store. These are just some of the references from the lookbook as far as what's in Philly. And the color, the bright pops of color are really distinctive to Philly. And so we brought that in with a lot of murals and paint.
And as time went on, you noticed that the encampments were getting smaller. So did you have to keep on going back and just pull dressing away? Or was it shot on different time periods, different episodes? Like, how did you keep track of all of the continuity going back and pulling away, putting back? And
a lot of spreadsheets. We were dressing and redressing constantly. We couldn't, they were going back to this street repeatedly on different days, and we couldn't leave anything there. So, pictures, continuity pictures, the same set dressers, doing it over and over again. There were some days where it went from more trash to less trash to more trash. There's, definitely a lot of different looks to the trash.
Yeah, some very expensive clean trash that the background actors, would be sitting on, immersed in, underneath. So, the dressers really had to keep track of like what was real trash from the neighborhood and what was our fake expensive clean trash. It was a constant struggle.
Yeah, people don't think that you have to have your own special set dressing clean trash, because why would you think of that? But you can't put actors in real trash. There's dog poop and needles and, it's trash.
yeah, and then keeping the clean trash clean after a day of shooting, that's a job in itself, because, people that walk by just come and they throw their trash in the bag, in the can. So you know how hard that is.
And the community was sensitive. It's a lot to ask a community to have a film production come back week after week and make their neighborhood look a little less desirable and down than what it normally is. It was, production had to work really hard to keep the peace and let them know that this is not real. There are not encampments and drug use happening in your streets. There was a tough morning where we thought we were getting shut down. Do you remember that, Carol?
That was the day. We weren't allowed to put that one back. That's by a schoolyard. That's a school playing field. And we had to take that one away and could not put it back and almost got shut down that day.
And like I said before, this is for me, watching it was like a production design masterclass. There's so much that you don't know about these characters, especially Mickey. She's very quiet and reserved. She doesn't share any personal info, even with her, partner, longtime police partner. So I think the viewer is really relying on the sets and the settings to help give them insight into who these people are, especially Mickey. And I love that when you first see where Mickey lives with Thomas, she's in this very low key, attic apartment. She obviously just moved in. And I guess that because of, the moving boxes and the end table still wrapped up in, with the bubble wrap. My eye always brought me to this Oriental lamp that was just like sitting on the table without a shade on it. And then I was like, oh, this has to be going somewhere else, and then later on, you see a flashback to Mickey, and she's in an apartment or a house with her ex-boyfriend. And then finally you see that lamp on her bedside table. So you know that there's more coming to the story. It just seems like there's a lot of flashbacks. And I think the sets just tell so much. There's so much detail. So can you tell me a little bit about Mickey's apartment? Was there like any reference to her attic apartment or any influences that guided you in making any choices as far as like the architectural detail or like the furniture choices?
We had scouted a sort of a similar attic type apartment, and the architecture of Mickey's apartment was the sort of the biggest question mark for me when I started thinking about the set design, because in reality, the character lived in a very modest, uninteresting apartment. So I thought a lot about, how can we make this a little bit weird, a little bit odd, and really embrace and bring faults and imperfections to this set, but also not distract too much to keep it very grounded and realistic and organic in what she could afford and what she would have. So we got to play a lot with roof lines and interesting undulations in the architecture. And then, the rest of it was, the layer that's the scenic department and that set decoration brings to it. And, I think everyone did a wonderful job really embracing the faults and the mistakes and the ugly things in order to make it feel real. And just with a few little hints here or there of Mickey's past and her interests.
And Carol, what can you tell me about? Did you find it very easy to shop for Mickey since she seems like a closed book, or?
Actually, that is a thing that made it a little challenging because, she has just moved in. So what in her apartment is telling her story, because she's just moved in there. She hasn't really unpacked, and she is kind of, like you said, a closed book. How much is she revealing? She does live a lot for Thomas, and she wants him to have the best environment. So we actually did concentrate a lot on his room. Really, I think more than most other spaces, because Mickey's all about Thomas and music, and she's just really consumed by music. So those were the two main touch points for Mickey.
Yeah, and it shows. His room is just so comfortable and has all his things in it, and he's so smart. But I love all the different angles of the ceilings and all the set dressing. Like I said, I love like the storyline of like her unpacking. But I just kept on saying, oh my gosh, I just wish she can unpack those boxes back there. They would drive me crazy. But I have to be honest and tell you that G-Pops, I am obsessed with G-Pops house. Had no idea. It's another one. Blew me away when I saw the photos that were in the Dropbox that this was a set and you built it. There's just so much detail and life in that house. And again, because I worked in Philly, I kept on, when I was watching this, I'm thinking, oh, it looks just like a house that I shot in. I kept on thinking that had to be so-and-so's house or this or that. So when I found out that it was built, I mean, beautiful work as far as the drop ceiling, all the architecture, the iron staircase with the carpet going right wrapped around the stairway, the mirror, mirrored dining room, just so much. Again, the layers and layers of this man's life and the different periods of furniture, the plates, everything. The kitchen, the wallpaper. Okay, I have to ask about the wallpaper. I know I'm going like crazy on this because seriously, I think this is a magnificent set. And again, Carol, you did an amazing job with bringing this and bringing the character and Amy as far as like the details and I mean the scenic work, the age up in the ceiling. Amy, tell me what the inspiration behind G-Pops was.
The first sort of research scout I had with Liz Moore and our director, she took us to her cousin's row house. It wasn't as old man as this particular space, but it really gave me a sense of sort of the time capsules that a lot of these row homes are stuck in. And there's this amazing Instagram account called Philly Time Capsules that a real estate agent started. And it's just, they have all these like wonderful, like stuck in time materials and details and kitsch and, life layers. So we just sort of became obsessed with it and saved every little image and pulled little pieces that we liked from each home and all the decorations and the decor, wood paneling. So I would say this was definitely the most fun, was G-Pops, at least for me. And when the dressing came to the table, it just, it speaks volumes about the character. And it's really nice compliment coming from you, Regina. That means a lot. And there's so much personality in these homes, and that's where the murals came in. A lot of these like late 60s murals, and this one, our Charge Scenic came up with a theme, and this was a little bit of a way for us to introduce some Philadelphia architecture inside the space and some common known buildings, but everything else was just a wonderful like scavenger hunt of vintage items, and it's really beautiful. And luckily we also had a DP that wasn't afraid of things like giant mirrors in the dining room, and let us play with a lot of reflection.
Yeah, I mean, Carol, can you go into more detail about where you found some of this, the really great dressing that you have? I mean, the cut floral, the carpet, I was like on so many jobs. I'm like, where did she find that carpet and the mirrors? I mean, every little piece you put in there just tells such a backstory.
Well, it's carpet time. We got she keeps those for us. Yeah. I think she had the orange and then a green. Yeah, it was perfect. She may have just gotten it recently when we did this. So that Instagram account, we kind of kept tabs on it, and she would announce estate sales. So right at the time we were dressing this, one of the assistants, Abigail Benavides, saw there was an estate sale, and that's where those drapes came from, and a lot of furniture came from there. And she just spent the day in Philly and basically bought the entire estate sale. And then beyond that, we just were going all over. We did a lot in the thrift shops in the Philly area, so we would get that flavor that is a little different. And then we just gathered stuff all of our normal places. We went to a bunch of set sales. There were some shows wrapping up, but that estate sale really gave us a lot to work with.
Yeah, that was really exciting when she came back with that truckload of things that we've been stocking.
I mean, it looked like a massive undertaking, and I love the kitchen cabinets. Like everything is just so relatable, especially like me coming from the East Coast. And, I love the different decades of like when they might have replaced the stove or when they might have purchased his dining room set. But I have to ask you, Carol, how much time did you actually have to dress this set on stage? Did you have enough time, or because I feel like we never have enough time to actually put all those great layers in?
No, I think, and actually on a set like this, it kind of works. If you start to run out of time and you're just kind of shoving something like, we have all this stuff, we want to use it all, and you're just kind of sticking it in there, it actually works on a set like this. I feel like, yeah, no, we didn't really have enough time. It wasn't one of those like the place is empty and we're shooting it tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock things, but it's better than that. We had a bunch of days to pull it together.
Yeah, it was one of the last sets we had, and I think the biggest challenge was working around the shooting schedule, because they were shooting next door, like at the police station was one of our first, and so we would have to sneak in here. And
that was challenging, and also they kept taking out the walls and rolling their equipment across the living room, so that made it hard to dress.
And what about the second floor? Was that also a build? The girls' bedroom, their little secret closet room.
Yeah, that was right next to it. Also a full dress, and I think the shape of the room came from something that I had seen on the Instagram account. And then just this was another one I think Carol and I talked a lot about. It's what would a grandfather have left over from his daughters, or where so there was actually a lot of history built into this.
Yeah, it actually looks like my sister's bedroom, my older, like the old, provincial furniture and the wicker headboard. Everything about that set is just really great. Again, the drop ceiling, your scenic work, everything. It just tells so much. So the other thing was the police department. You said, Amy, that your father was a police officer. Was that just like a fun undertaking for you? Was that based off a real police precinct in Philadelphia?
It was really fun. The nostalgia of it. I think for me, you have all these sets that, as a designer and decorator, you kind of want to check off your list, like the police station, the Oval Office, those sorts of sets. And I always wanted to make a different police station, because when I grew up, my father worked in a station in Detroit, and we would go and visit, and it was always, in my memory, so much smaller than what you see on television, because you have to, make these spaces that can accommodate the shooting and the crew and the story. And so we really, with this space, I wanted to give it small spaces and long, narrow hallways, and have it feel really cramped, so that things are kind of shoved in. And I think with a lot of police stations, and we went to one in the Kensington neighborhood, they start as a different kind of building, and they have to adapt over time with technology and usage. And so one of the bigger things that Carol and I talked about was that there aren't a lot of desks in a police station. Officers, there just isn't the amount of space. Officers work out of their vehicles. So we decided to make the focus the bullpen, and that was kind of the multifunctional space. It's where they had lunch, it's where they had briefings, it's where they hung out. It's where they could overhear conversations, which was a part of the story. And so we made up this backstory. The photo you're looking at now was that the police station also used to serve as a court. And so now it's just their storage area where they used to hold hearings.
And Carol, again, so much gap, so much layers of life and backstory and the whole Christmas thing. Where did you even begin? Did you do a lot of rentals? Were these mostly purchases?
I have to admit, I do have a special place in my heart for G-Pops, but I love this set too. Yeah, you'll appreciate this. A thing that I love the most about this set is the floor. Like, it was one of the first things that we started working on, and it's got different patterns in different areas, and it's that VCT. I don't know. I love the floor. And we've got a bunch of stuff from State Supply and from different office supply vendors. And then we were very lucky to get a lot of things that we could use again from other shows. I like to reuse because then it comes with the life that it's had. It comes pre-aged. You don't have to be precious with it. And you can just get large amounts of things off of other shows and give them another life. And after our show ended, we passed all of these things on to other shows. So hopefully they got at least 3 lives and maybe more.
Well, it doesn't really look like any other police precinct that I've seen in recent years, to be quite honest. It's very original and another set. Had no idea. I really seriously, I thought this whole show was shot on like a location. I have to ask the tile wall, was that fabricated and painted by your scenics, or did you find the actual, like the block that you find in all the?
That was CNC routed, and then amazing scenic work on top of that. It was, it's kind of like a ubiquitous tile in Philly for all the municipal buildings. And I liked how like ugly and linear and graphic it felt. So they knocked it out of the park with the tile. Really, really works.
Yeah, it really does. And it feels so real. Everything, yeah, all your choices are just so real. And I guess that's the whole point of it. That's what we do, and that's why it looks so great.
Yeah, it was really fun, but Carol's team along with the clearance, to be able to use a lot of things that you normally wouldn't see in a police station, like sports memorabilia and personality items and smalls. And they were lucky to be able to clear those things and bring real kid art to the story, and work with our graphic designer to make things really feel authentic and random.
You might not notice actually just watching the show, but while we were dressing it, the lines of the architecture actually really hold the set they hold the space together in a really interesting way. So, I mean, Amy was thinking about that. We talked about that. And underneath all of the things, you can really see it. And it's emphasized by all the conduit and all the hardware. And it's something people wouldn't notice underpinning the space, but brings a lot of subtext to it. So that was also something that I think was really different and worked really well.
Yeah, and it's so labor intensive for the dressers to, add conduit and add things like this to the set, and to have, ceilings and flooring and, basically have a very enclosed set. So they had to put a lot of time into it.
Well, it really shows, and it really sells the precinct as realistic as you built it. We're going to go to something a little bit more cheerful. The Mummers Club and the Mummers Locker, which felt a little bit, the Mummers Locker room especially, a little bit brighter than everything else in the series. I really wasn't familiar with Mummers and what they do. So, Carol, do you want to tell me a little bit about that and how did you go about getting the costumes and all of the different Mummer memorabilia and set dressing?
Well, I did not know anything about Mummers either. So, but it was really cool to learn about it. It's really iconic Philly tradition. On New Year's Day, the Mummers have their parade. And I think they've been doing it for over 100 years. So we had a contact through Liz, Jeff Crompton, who is a mummer and has a clubhouse, and he was really helpful to us. We called him all the time. We asked him all the questions about, would mummers do this? Would mummers do that? Would they have this? And Amy did a lot of research. We all did a lot of research and watched videos of them and learned as much as we could. But Jeff was just invaluable. I mean, he basically lent us everything in this picture. we went to his clubhouse and cleaned him out. And he was so cheerful and happy to do it. And I think he's probably pretty proud. We said, we don't want to misrepresent anything. We want it to be real. We want it to be what you do, what you use, what you have. And he opened his doors to us and we took everything.
That's fantastic. We meet so many great people, on our job. I love that. And you're right. He probably is so proud watching this. What about like the lighting fixtures? I would feel like we always have to have these discussions with the DPs. Since you had so many different DPs for different episodes, was it just something that you spoke to them in the beginning? Was everybody on the same page? Did you have to supply a lot of lights that they requested?
These DPs actually tended to be more towards the natural light, I would say. This is a location and those fixtures were there, and I think they probably replaced the bulbs. They were pretty easy to deal with, I'd say, on the lighting. We didn't have a lot of specialized things that we needed to do. Some of the DPs always like a lot of lamps, and some of them are really minimalist in their choices about lighting and just, wanting to keep it simple. So I would say, on the whole, this was a show that did not have a lot of special lighting needs. I don't know, Amy, do you remember something different than that?
No, I think you are right about that. We really had some very unfussy DPs when it came to that. I mean, they definitely were involved in the choices and the types, but the pilot DP really trusted us to kind of go crazy. I think some of the other DPs were surprised when they came in and saw how small the sets were. And not a lot of wild walls, but I think they all did a beautiful job lighting from outside, and I think for the most part, Carol's practicals lit the set entirely, so she can get a tiny gaffer credit.
Yeah. What was surprising though were the mirrors. All of the DPs wanted mirrors everywhere, and Amy loves mirrors too. So every set they were like, "Where are the mirrors?" And we just got used to putting them everywhere, which is unusual. They used the mirrors. They had very specific ways they wanted to use them. They were really integral to a lot of shots, which is, I think, gave the show a different look than you see in shows of like this.
That's good to know. And Amy, in the beginning, I know that there are multiple directors. So who was there a point person, or was that the pilot director who really kind of set the tone? I mean, was it hard with the different directors and trying to keep the continuity of having it all look like one story?
I think, well, our pilot director, Hagar Ben Asher, is, I think, a lot like Carol and I. She loves trash. She loves shooting through things. She loves detail. She loves ugly things. And so we would always talk about ugly, beautiful things. And it was always, she would ask, like, more trash. We need more trash. And so, we'd have truckloads and truckloads of trash that we would bring to the story, and then we would add even more on top of that while we were shooting. But I think she really set the tone. I think she has an amazing aesthetic, and she is just such a fantastic director, and worked well with not only the art department, but also, the other departments with costumes and with cinematography. So she really, I don't know if you agree, Carol, but I think she really did set the tone. And the directors that preceded her were very respectful of what we had accomplished in the pilot, and really kept to that tone and kept to the themes.
Yeah, they definitely. I would say the way they took the show in their own direction, the way they expressed their voices was more in the acting and the way they structure their shots more than trying to go a different way with aesthetics. Hagar is really a visionary. Like she's amazing. She is a visionary director and just a really cool person with a vision for the show, what she wanted to look like from the beginning. Like she was just like, I want this, which was refreshing and great. And watching like the actors was great. I feel lucky to have worked with her.
Oh, definitely. She and our showrunners too were, a consistent supporters of that first, aesthetic and look. So that's a way to sort of help the like preceding directors. I think we also would share a lot of lookbooks with the directors when they would come in and make sure that they had tours of the sets so that they would be really familiar. And, in part that's to get them on our side so they're, we're not having to change the world, but also to get them excited and really educate them about the backstory and about the neighborhood in Kensington.
And what were each of your greatest pleasures or satisfactions working on this film?
I mean, G-Pops. I guess it's between G-Pops and doing these street scenes, which, I mean, obviously the subject is sad. And I don't know, it feels sort of strange to say that we like doing these street scenes because they are sad and terrible, but also beautiful. I think we heighten them, we gave them a beauty beyond what they have, along with the DPs and the directors and the way it was shot. I think it all comes together. We always hope all of our departments are going to come together, create something, to create art, right? And I think in that case, I think we achieved that. So it feels strange to say we achieved it with garbage, but I think we did. Like Amy's saying, the ugly beautiful, like Hagar. I think, yeah, we made the ugly look beautiful and tell a story. So you don't get to do that all the time.
And you did it very well.
I think the most rewarding part, because there's so much difficult subject matter and it is really depressing. And the first time I saw Kensington, to see people, shooting up on the streets and the drug use, and the the sex workers and the conditions, but having a showrunner and a writer who knew the neighborhood so well, things became very community oriented and, down to the graffiti artists and police officers that we had contacts with. So I just really appreciated, our team and our crew caring so much and having so much enthusiasm and honor and respect for a community that is, really struggling and doesn't necessarily have the respect. So for me, that was very fulfilling. And, anytime someone says that, they think we shot on location is, a thrill, because, the authenticity was so important to all of us while we were making it. So if it, looks like Kensington, that was the main goal. And if the spaces look like locations, that's a huge compliment for the whole team, because it really, there's so many people involved. I mean, our graphic artists did an incredible amount of work, and just all the layers that everyone brought to the story was, very rewarding. And to have that come together is rare.
There was one thing though that I did that I am very proud of, which is that we went down to Philly a lot to, drive around, see Kensington, and their fire hydrants are different than the ones in New York. So I had a craftsperson, Cami Upton, build us 2 Philly fire hydrants, and we carried them everywhere and we put them out on the street everywhere, and I think they made a big difference.
And we also had, like, I don't know if we ended up making those, but those, I called them yellow waffles, which they would, in Philly, they're like reflector pieces. So, we got really detailed into the products and the elements that, maybe just take a little bit further away from being a New York City location.
Yeah, I didn't feel like it was New York at all. Again, I don't think people realize how hard it is and how much work goes into doing something that, like what most people would say, isn't beautiful. But these shows, and I know it's a very serious show, and it talks about drug addiction and some sad things, and there's a lot of death. But what was the work and everything? I just wish more shows that aren't pretty got more recognition for production design, for set decorating, because it is all these different layers. It doesn't have to be beautiful layers, but it just, I don't know, brings you into the story. It doesn't take you out of it. It just sucks you in even more. And it just tells you so much. And I was going to ask before, the question about your greatest pleasure was, what were your biggest challenges on the show, if you had any?
It always starts with budget and time. Those challenges. I think we also we had some kind of restrictive locations and sensitive locations. And sometimes we weren't able to bring as much trash as we wanted to because of the sensitive locations. We weren't allowed to change out street signage, which was a heartbreak because we had all the street signage made. And so kind of working around those limitations were heartbreaking, but also satisfying that we were able to pull it off at the same time. So yeah, there weren't a lot of challenges with this one, but I think having some of the location limitations was a little heartbreaking.
There was one conundrum, which is that the end of the show is on New Year's Day, right? It ends with the Mummers Parade. Well, we started shooting in, I think, February. So as we're supposed to be getting later in the year, I think we started between Halloween and Thanksgiving, right? So we have a Thanksgiving scene early on. So we're moving into spring and summer, but the story is moving into fall and winter. So that was a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, the seasons they were in reverse. And then also, our shooting schedule was longer than the story. So to keep trees without leaves was a big challenge.
And you shot it episodically, correct, with the different directors. So how many days were in your schedule for each episode?
We cross-boarded a couple of.
Yeah, luckily we cross-boarded a couple. And that was a challenge to get that in the works as well, because it always saves art department and set deck money when you're able to group the sets and not have to dress and redress.
I think there were weren't they 8-day episodes? I think.
Yeah,
about 8 days.
It wasn't enough.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
and
it was tight.
A big challenge that we had was that a lot of the exteriors were very far out in Brooklyn, and a lot of other sets were up in Yonkers. So it could take you 2 to 3 hours to get from one to the other. So it was really hard. We had to have separate teams of dressers in those locations. Usually one of your dressers to be able to go to different sets during the day, and we could not. We could never do that. And just for us as well, getting from one place to the other, being at set in the morning, and then getting to what we're dressing for the next day, I would say that was quite a challenge.
Being in 10 places at once was the biggest challenge, especially when you're scouting with a new team for the upcoming episode and you've got meetings to attend, and having locations 2 hours apart, your main sets that was hard. dividing our time. It's really, and then we really had to depend on each other to, okay, you open this set, I'll go to that set, and, really leapfrog.
So Carol, were there any other, I know you mentioned some SDSA members before, as far as like carpet time with the great carpet. Are there any other members that you used or can give a shout out to that supported you on the project? And if you remember which sets they might have helped you out on?
Well, Tess from Ashland Flowers did the funeral flowers for us, and it's always great to work with Tess. We got a lot of light fixtures from Scott at City Nick, as you always do. And it wasn't just that carpet that we got from Carpet Time. We got all of that tile from her as well, and many other we got a lot of things from Carpet Time. We had a lot of hospitals, so we got equipment from Ames, American International Medical. They're a business member. Got a lot of shades from American Shade and Window. Who else did we use? Bridge. We actually shot at Bridge, which was kind of funny. Yeah. Yeah, we used their office as a location, and I got a lot of stuff from him for different sets. We used Eclectic. So, yeah, we worked with many of our favorites.
Is there anything else that either one of you would like to say that I might have forgot? Is there a set or anything special?
I think another bright spot and a moment of warmth and color was the community garden. I think that was a fun one for us as well, to sort of show the lighter side and the community side of Kensington. That, I know the dressers had so many art projects, like coloring little CDs and making little ornaments. So that was a really nice one. And we shot that one up in Yonkers. And another like full collaboration between, Greens department and Scenic and Set Deck, and, everyone brought their A game.
Our set dressing team was really, really great. All the people are really great. They're all really committed. They would unload a truck in the dark, in the cold, and the rain, and not complain to our faces. But we really had a consistent, lovely, hardworking, smart team, led by Brandon Cook. I was the lead man. Yeah, just really a really great group, and that's what makes a good experience on a show.
And I love what you said earlier, Regina, about how difficult it is to create contemporary sets that are interesting and visually appealing. I think it's, for me at least, and I don't know, Carol, if you agree, but when you do a period set, there's so many fun things you can bring to the story with patterns and wallpapers and nostalgia. And to do a contemporary set and have it look good, I think is a real challenge.
It is. Yeah, I mean, it really is. But that was kind of something that I liked about this show, is that it seemed like that, but it wasn't that. It was more interesting than that, and there was more storytelling with the set dressing than sometimes is asked of you. And that goes back to Hagar. She wanted to tell stories with like everything, every teeny tiny salt shaker and piece of dressing, and so we had to live up to that.
No, I was saying, but it was needed, and it was also done in such a way, like you said, it can go either two ways in my personal experience. I feel like people try to get too kitschy and try to, make a time capsule, like you're saying, but with like really jarring wallpaper or something, and the sets supported the actors in a way where it wasn't distracting. It told the story instead of being the story. If I'm correctly saying that. And again, I just wish it could, contemporary shows would get, especially something that's not beautiful, would get more credit for the work that we do, because there is so much detail that goes into it. And it's a character. The sets just play a character in themselves. And I'm sure when your actors walked onto these sets, stage sets, they just felt in character and felt like they were supported in the way that they should be. And that's what we do, and that's magic. And you guys just did a really great job at it. And I feel bad saying that, because the show is such a serious, again, storyline and a matter, but it was really well executed and designed and decorated and done. So
Thank you. Yeah, I caught, what was, Carol, do you remember the actor's name that played G-Pop?
I do not remember his name.
I would catch him just sitting in his set and just really owning it and feeling it and kind of marveling at it. And that's really rewarding when an actor can, you can enhance their experience. So that was always fun to see him hiding out on the set.
Yeah, he loved that set.
Carol and Amy, thank you so much. This has been an enlightening conversation. Thank you again for discussing your creative collaboration and sharing your exquisite design process on Long Bright River.
Thank you so much for having us. Great questions, Regina.
Thanks, Regina. It was always great to see you.
It was great to see both of you and meeting you, Amy, for the first time.
Yeah, I'm such a fan of your work. I've seen your name for years and years. You're very talented, so it was cool to see you in this.
Oh, well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.